Welcome to our full-time missionary training videos. These videos are designed to help you get a firm, broad understanding of what it means to become full-time missionaries in the foreign lands. These videos will be a massive blessing and it will help you get started right in the mission field. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel because what we're going to do is be continually uploading content that will be valuable to you to help you in your work in the foreign lands. Also, if you're somebody that's wanting to get into the mission field, but you really don't know how and you need help, please contact us. There's a description in this video and we provide the link to do so. We would love to walk you through the process. Also, we have a Facebook group. That link is in there as well. That Facebook group is missionaries around the world collaborating and networking together, strengthening one another in the work that we're doing in the foreign lands. And then one final note, this whole entire series is based off of a book, Pursuing the Call, with Danny Lamastra. He's a missionary in El Salvador. I highly recommend you getting a copy of that. And again, thank you so much for being here. We pray that these videos are a blessing to you. Thank you. All right. Hey, Danny, thank you for joining us again. You are going to talk to us about fundraising. I kind of like guys like you because you're the expert in the fundraising area and I'm the guy that did it all wrong. So, things worked out for us, but I'm just saying you could tell us how to do it right. And then I'm going to kind of give people some of my experience and what I did in this sense. Again, it's not that I did it wrong, but I could have done it better and I could have did the route that you did. And I wish I would have. So, just to let everybody know, we're going to talk about the book God Asked, because you, by my memory, you tried to raise funds. It wasn't quite working out and you got the book God Asked and then it changed everything. Is that correct? Or did I get that testimony from somebody else?
That's pretty much correct. So when I started out at fundraising for becoming a missionary, I had all these preconceived ideas of what fundraising looked like and what was the best way to do it. And I tried to go about it, the way that I thought was best. And I really just kind of spun my wheels and didn't make a lot of progress for the first several months. And then there was a lot of factors that kind of converged at the same time that really resulted in me beginning to have a lot more success. But one of those factors was definitely reading a book called The God Ask by Steve Shadrach. And that book was recommended to be I think 3 different missionaries independently of each other. And so after the third one, I was like, I should probably read this if I'm having a little bit of trouble with fundraising. And not all the ideas that we talk about today are necessarily going to be directly from that book, because I think that our own ideas have probably gotten mixed in and somewhere in between. And it's hard to say at this point what came from that book and what came from other sources. But that book is definitely a fantastic resource. I would consider it almost mandatory reading for anybody that's a new missionary or becoming a missionary, wants to have a little bit more insight on good fundraising techniques and good fundraising theology as well, because the book has quite a bit dedicated to the theology of fundraising and theology of finances. So really just a great resource.
I'm going to put a plug in here because of your book. I got the book and I read it. Now, I'm not making any excuses, but I'm already on the mission field. I'm not saying that I can't go back to the States and follow the principles of God Asked. But I'm just saying I'm already on the mission field. Just what Danny said, it should just be mandatory. I know, people could say, hey, you're just stroking his ego. But hey, I think Pursuing the Call should be a mandate. And then also the God Asked should be a mandate. Because it is an incredible book. And like you said, it gave the principles behind it, biblical principles behind it. And, I can say this, I've never been embarrassed of our ministry. Okay. I've never been embarrassed of what we do down here, but I'm embarrassed in the sense of asking for donations for the funding of the ministry. And after I read that book, trust me, you will not be embarrassed. you will not be embarrassed asking for funding, because you will understand the biblical reasons of why we should be asking people to fund the work that God has placed in our lives. So I'm with Danny. You should read that book 100%. You should implement the book prior to going to the mission field, implementing the processes of raising funds. And again, Danny's testimony is incredible on becoming fully funded prior to going to the mission field. So go ahead and just share some things about what you feel about, raising funds.
Yeah, so I think that anytime that a missionary is brand new to becoming a missionary, or is even just beginning to consider that possibility of becoming a missionary, at least for me, my goal initially was, let me find a ministry where I don't have to fundraise. And I think that a lot of people think like that.
Mm-hmm.
What I found, though, is that there are very few missions agencies, at least coming out of the United States, that do not require some level of self-fundraising. Whether you like it, love it, hate it, whether you think it's a good thing, whether you think it's a bad thing, that's just really the reality, is that there are very few missions organizations that do not require some level of fundraising on the part of the missionary. And actually, one of the big things that helped me to make that shift of being open to having, a potential self-funded position was that one of the few major missions agencies at the time that I was becoming a missionary that did not have self-funding, that did have salaries for their missionaries provided, they had to pull a relatively significant number of missionaries off the field because they did not have a sufficient amount of funds to continue to meet everybody's salaries.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one of the things that made me think, oh, maybe the self-fundraising possibility wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. But the reality is that at least if you're coming from the United States, again, I don't know if all countries do it this way, but there's not a lot of opportunities that aren't going to require some level of fundraising on the part of the missionary. And so it's a reality for most missionaries that you do have to get comfortable with.
Okay. And so now, I read a book, not the God Asked, when I first got here, because I'm not one of them guys that came to the mission field fully funded. So, I came to and again, people, now you're going to be watching this and go, well, I'm going to do it Sean's way. No, do not do it Sean's way. I came to the mission field with $350 promise, and that was my wife, myself, and my daughter. So trust me, that's not the way you want to come to the mission field. But there's a gentleman that is quoted in the God Asked. His name's Scott, I believe. He wrote a book, and I read that book, and he said that there's three types of missionaries. One that will just get on their knees and pray to God for their needs to be met. Another one will market, through advertising or whatever, newsletters and things like that. And then the other one, and he jokingly said, it's the D.L. Mooney way, where he'll go shake your hand and say, I'm building a bridge in Africa. Were you the one that's going to give the $2,000 or the $5,000? So I think by reading your book, my assessment of you, I think obviously you pray. I don't doubt that a bit. But I think by, you talking about marketing materials and things like that, I think you're probably definitely a gentleman that was, develop marketing materials. Cause I think I went on your website or something like that. And I saw your brochures, your business cards, your prayer cards. I mean, you were squared away. And then I think the book helped you become the D.L. Mooney way, meaning be aggressive in asking people to get behind you and fund your work. So if you don't mind, just kind of share some things, some principles that you got off of the God Asked and how you implemented them in your raising of funds.
Yeah. So first I'll talk about the principle that you just talked about, which is the importance of asking directly. And so I would definitely lean more into that third category of a little bit more of a direct ask. And, I'm from New Jersey. We're a very direct people. We don't beat around the bush much. And so where I'm from, and my opinion is that a lot of places are like this. If you don't specifically ask for support, then people aren't going to know that you need support.
Yeah.
People are not used to, like, for missionaries, it's very common that you have to raise your own salary, right? But most people don't have that experience at their job. And so if you're telling somebody about this new opportunity that you have to be a missionary, not everybody is going to connect the dots that you need financial support and donations if you don't ask them directly for it. And so that is, one principle of the book is to ask directly. But another, and this was probably the most revolutionary concept for me, was that your efforts should be focused on the smallest groups possible. You should be focused on individuals. When you can't speak with an individual, you should focus on a small group. Always prioritize the smallest context possible. And that was not my thought when I first started. To kind of give my background, I'm from the Assemblies of God, and a lot of Assemblies of God churches, at least the one I grew up in, they receive a lot of missionaries on a regular basis that come through. Some will have a mission Sunday once a month. Whatever the case may be, there's a pretty fair amount of missionaries that come through on a Sunday service. And so my concept of what it meant to fundraise when I first started out was, well, you write to churches, the biggest ones that'll take you, you go and you preach, and then everybody just gives you a ton of money and you're set. And that really isn't how it works in reality. I did end up going to churches, and churches can be very good to give you a large, one-time donation, because of the fact that when they take an offering, it can, be, $1,000 plus, depending on the size of the church. But in terms of getting monthly support, I found that the smaller you go, the better. Meaning, if you can talk one-on-one with an individual and present your ministry, that's where you're going to have the highest success in terms of getting monthly support. And even when it comes to churches, the smaller churches are sometimes easier to get monthly support from, because a large church, you may think, well, they have a bigger budget, and they do, but they also probably have a lot more controls in place to make sure that those funds are being administered well. Mm-hmm. So, for example, there was a relatively big church, well, not relatively, a really big church that was near where I went to college. And I knew a number of people that had gone there, and I reached out to them. And I'm thinking, this could be a church that has the potential to really provide a significant amount of monthly support. And what they told me was, well, because, we have such a large missions budget and we want to administer it well, our missions board, they meet at this set time every year. And, that's when we consider new missionaries. And so come back to us at this time of the year.
Yeah.
And that's totally understandable. But like, if you need support now, then that's not going to work for you as a missionary. And so I think the first principle, ask directly. The second principle from the book, the smaller the context, the better. And then thirdly, I would just add that, I'm trying to think what was the third. This might be part to edit out.
Well, yeah, while you're thinking about that, the third one, let me just share this, kind of talk about what you just said. On the smaller scale, again, I've been in the mission field for 8 years. We've been blessed. I mean, I'm not gonna say that we haven't. We've been very blessed in the mission field. But 100%, it hurts if a major church says, look, we're done. We're pulling out. We're not going to send you monthly support anymore. That hurts. When you have a smaller donation or an individual pull out, that's not so damaging to your ministry. And so, see, to me, the important thing would be is to, one, before you go to the mission field, you do become fully funded. And like Danny said, you get one time, or you get individuals or families or couples involved in your mission work. And see, again, your whole idea would be is you get several of those people, maybe 25 to 50 to 100, and when you do that, when you have one that says, look, just because of this situation, we can't send funding anymore. Well, guess what? That's not going to be a body slam to your ministry, but if you are only relying on large donations from churches and one pulls out, it can hurt. And so, see, to me, I think it's like, if you're going to if you're going to build a house on a hill, you're going to want multiple piers to support that house, not just like three or four, because obviously if one breaks and falls, the house is going to come crashing down. And then, like Danny was saying, that he was seeing some some missionaries being supported by one organization. They couldn't fund that missionary any longer. I've seen that here in Honduras. I bought a motorcycle from a missionary where the sending organization pulled all their funding, and there were multiple missionaries from that organization going back to the United States. Mm-hmm. So, to me, I think what Danny's saying is very important, is to focus on individuals and couples and families to partner with you. And one other thing I want to say, and it kind of goes back to my experience years ago. And, I never thought of what you said. People don't realize that missionaries are supported by donations, majority. And, Danny, I've been doing this 8 years, and that's never dawned on me that they think, wait a minute, I get a paycheck. They probably get a paycheck too. And the reason why I say this is I remember years ago, I was on Facebook, and I have a friend in Romania that's a missionary. And he says, yeah, we're believing God for a car. And if he didn't get 10 amens, he got 50 amens. Oh, amen, brother. Hey, man, I'm believing with you, brother. I'm praying for you, brother. And I'm just thinking in my mind, they don't get it, do they? And I went on there, and, I'm not from New Jersey, but I can be a little direct. And I said, he doesn't need your prayers. He needs your money, and that's all I said. I just typed in the comments, and then I can't remember, but I think I messaged him maybe a couple hours later. I said, look, I'm sorry I blew up your posting about needing a car, but brother, I was just getting so mad about, people just saying, I'll pray for you. I'll amen in you. He said, you know what? After you sent that, I started getting all kinds of donations. And it was like in a matter of a couple of days, they raised the money for their car. So anyway, it just, people don't realize how you get paid. I mean, I've actually had people, when we pick them up and, they start asking questions, it's their first time meeting them. Maybe it's a team member. They ask that, how do you even get paid? People don't even realize that. No, yeah, so I think it's important for you, for you as an individual, as a missionary, to go and tell them, I don't get paid unless you are a part and partner with what I'm doing down here. Yeah. So anyway, I'm sorry.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I have a story as well. When I was here for about a year, I became the director of the prison ministry. And I mentioned in one of my monthly newsletters that I had become the director. And there was a person that pulled their support shortly after that. And I contacted them and just, make sure everything was okay. Because normally when something like that happens out of the blue without the person communicating with you at all, it can be like they had an automatic withdrawal set up and they changed their payment information, anything like that. Not necessarily like malintent or anything. And so I just contacted the person, to ask them, just double check with them on how everything was. And they said, well, now that you're the director, we didn't think that you needed any funding. We thought you got a salary.
Yeah.
Nope. Don't have a salary. Still got to get all my support through donations. And so, just like you said, not everybody realizes. But as you were speaking, you reminded me of what the third point was that I wanted to make that I couldn't remember. And that is when you're fundraising, you should always work through existing relationships as opposed to just cold calling people. I remember that when I was in the beginning stages of fundraising, the idea of asking people I know to support me financially was just like the worst thing in the world. Like I did not want to do that at all, because if I ask a perfect stranger and they say no, then I never have to talk to the person again. But if I ask somebody I know, and then they can have like the relationship could be weird, maybe, that's how I thought down the road that it could just be weird in the relationship. And so I tried in the beginning to just cold call people. I downloaded a directory online of churches in my state, and it was just one after the other. And guess how many of those churches even got back to me?
Zero.
Not a lot. There was a couple, actually.
Oh, okay.
There was a couple, but it was not a high number. It was not a good use of my time.
Yeah.
And when I started to work my way, going through relationships, I found that the success rate was significantly higher.
Yeah.
That people that I knew, or the people that I had the meeting with because somebody I knew referred me directly, those were the meetings that had a significantly higher success rate. So then, just to recap those 3 points: number one, ask directly. Number two, the smaller the context, the better. If you're with an individual, that's ideal. And then number three, work through your existing relationships. Those would be the three main points that I took from the God Ask that made the biggest difference for me.
Yeah. Now, okay. So in the God Ask book, obviously, the principles of why asking, I highly believe that it removes the embarrassment. Trust me, and can you say that with me? Meaning, after you read and understood why you're asking, did it remove the embarrassment of asking?
I definitely think it made it a lot easier, for sure.
Okay. But then once you got into it, I would assume once you got into it, it was a lot easier, and then you become more confident as you were doing it.
Oh yeah, big time, for sure. Because one of the things that I think really surprised me as I was fundraising was the amount of people that were genuinely enthusiastically excited that I had asked them to be a part of the ministry.
Yeah.
Like and that's how they saw it. They saw it as me asking them to be part of a ministry, not as me asking them for money.
Yeah.
And the amount of people, even people in some cases that weren't in a position to be able to give, but were just super appreciative and thankful that I would reach out to them. That was what really surprised me. And once I saw that, that gave me a lot more confidence to ask people and to meet with people that, I maybe hadn't seen in a few years, but I didn't feel like I was putting them out or, just reaching for money if I reached out to them.
Yeah. And I think it's important that, people understand. And I think that not only your testimony, but the testimony in the book was people appreciated the fact that they were considered to be a part of your mission work. And again, I just think in my heart, I'm a salesman. I've been a salesman for since 1990. I've been a salesman, and you got to gain that confidence and boldness. But I think the book will embolden you. But then I think once you start doing it, it emboldens you further. And then it's like now it's a mindset that you change from being embarrassed to really saying, hey, I've got an awesome opportunity for you to be a part of God's work. Yeah. So now, again, I know that, we're not going to try to replace the book in this conversation. I think that you got to go get this book. You got to implement this book and get on it. And the other thing too, is I highly encourage you to go to the mission field being fully funded. I mean, I highly encourage you to do that. Again, bless God, praise God. Once we got on the mission field, things opened up very quickly for us. And I will say this, I was a businessman prior to coming to the mission field. I had a sizable nest egg, established, no debts other than a house payment. And that was being funded or paid for by rent. So I'm just saying we had no financial obligations once we came to the mission field. And then, like I said, we had a sizable savings account. So that made it easier to do that. So I'm not saying for people to do that because trust me, being down here in Honduras, being a part of mission Facebook groups and hearing people's stories of their struggles while they're in the mission field financially, it does not help you become a successful missionary. So I think going to the mission field being fully funded would be the most wisest thing that you could possibly do. So
yeah, and I would even add, number one, don't go to the mission field until you're fully funded. Most missions organizations even require that, but some may not. Obviously, in Sean's experience, he didn't go fully funded, so not every missions organization requires that, but definitely whether your mission organization requires that or not, raise all your funds, be at 100% of your monthly pledge support before you go. But then I would add to that, don't stop fundraising just because you hit 100%.
Yes.
Actually, in my book, I talk about 3 fundraising myths. And that's one of the myths that I talk about, the myth that fundraising ends once the budget is reached. if you're going to be on the mission field for an extended period of time, there's going to be times when you lose donors. There's going to be times when, sadly, people pass away, when people's financial situations don't allow them to continue, or there's changes in church leadership in one of the churches that's supporting you, and they decide to go in a different direction with their budget. There's a million different things that could happen. A pandemic hits,
Yeah.
Whatever the case.
I don't know about those.
Whatever the case may be, there's always going to be, a rotating donor base. And so if you have people that are eventually leaving, but you're not filling in that gap with anybody, then you're not going to have the funds that you need. And then secondly, having extra funds is great from a ministry standpoint because it really opens up a lot of opportunities for you. I'll give you an example. When I believe it was my first year here in El Salvador, there was a relatively bad earthquake. It was like a 6.8 or something like that. Wasn't like big news internationally. Most of the country was fine. But one of the communities that our organization worked in got hit pretty hard. There was a couple families that were extremely low income that had serious damage to their houses. And normally, if you're going to put together a fundraising campaign, it may take a few weeks before you get those donations, before you get the word out, before people donate, before the international money transfer gets the money to you. And, that's time where those families are without anywhere to stay, in theory. Because of the fact that I had extra funds because people had given above and beyond my normal budget, I had that money available to be able to say, boom, here's the money that we need, and let's do it, like, without delay. And so anytime, and that's just one example, but there's always opportunities to have expenses come up on the mission field. There's always ministry opportunities that could benefit from extra finances. And so don't feel like once you get to 100% of your budget that you should stop. Keep going as long as you can. Keep going.
Yeah.
And keep getting that number up higher and higher.
Yeah. I talked to a missionary friend of mine in China, and this guy's hardcore. I mean, he literally has a motorhome in the States. So when he comes back, he hits the road for like 2 or 3 months of raising funds. Now, this guy's got a massive organization. He's got Bible colleges. He's got a lot of things going on over there. And I mean, he literally has a motorhome. I don't know what type of motorhome or anything like that, but literally he travels. And I mean, he's constantly putting on Facebook, today I'm here, today I'm here, today I'm here. And he doesn't stop. It's a continual thing that he does. And it's something that he considers is just part of being a missionary. So I don't think you should ever rest on your laurels and say, oh, well, I'm fully funded, I guess I'm going to be okay. Like Danny was saying, that there are people that, stop giving for various reasons, or your ministry is going to grow, So I want to go back to a few things. I took some notes here as we were talking. One thing that happened to us is, I asked this guy, how much will it cost for us to live here? Oh, it's just going to be about $500 a month. Really? Yeah. Oh, rent, $50 a month, foods, maybe $100 a month. And I'm like, that's, for a family of 3. Oh no, that's my wife and I. So then I was like, oh, okay. So then maybe it's going to be about $750. So I thought that. Well, once we got here, I mean, literally we were shocked. I mean, this guy, was not wrong in the sense of way he lived, meaning he lived well below means. And I had a daughter, a wife, and the whole 9 yards, shampoo, conditioners, body soaps, the whole 9 yards. I mean, I was like, this isn't even realistic. So one, I think like Danny keeps on saying, you got to be fully funded. Well, what is your fully funded? Be honest in your budget, and then add some, add 10%, add 20%, because, things aren't going to always be what you think it is once you get to the mission field. And trust me, again, we're funded very well in what we do, but there's always expenses that pop up that you're not aware of, especially if you're trying to run a ministry that's, a larger scale ministry. Another thing that you talked about, Danny, is in the meetings. And again, this is all covered in God Ask, as far as in setting up meetings and becoming fully funded and things like that. But one thing that I appreciate that you talked about was the materials. You didn't go in just kind of hip shooting on your meetings. You actually had an actual outline of what you wanted to follow. So not only for you yourself, but you look professional, and you made people aware, hey, this guy's real. This is a real deal. This guy's a professional. This guy's going to go and do work for the kingdom of God. This excited people to be a part of what you were wanting, what you were going to do. And I think that that's really important for people to understand. When you go and set up these meetings, don't waste their time. Don't go looking like a fool. Don't go looking like you really don't know what you're doing. No, devise a plan, have a plan well devised out in an outline, and kind of like a presentation, and then have professional printed material, because that's what you did yourself. Am I correct? You had professional printed material.
Yeah, so there's two different types of materials that I would say every missionary should have as their fundraising. This is my personal opinion. It's not to say that every missionary that's ever done fundraising has done it this way. But in my opinion, there's two different things that you should definitely have. Number one is a video that is brief, maybe 3 to 5 minutes, but shows visually an idea of what it is that you're going to be doing as a missionary. And this is something that I think is important enough that I would invest money to have professionally done if you don't have video experiencing, or if you don't have the equipment to be able to do it. In my case, my dad worked in the television industry for 25 years. And so I had access to equipment that was not necessarily something that everybody would have access to be able to do it myself. But yeah, that's something that's important in my opinion, because they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. And I would say that a video is worth 1,000 pictures.
Yeah.
So 100,000 words, I guess. So because a video, it really gives that person the opportunity to see and experience what it is that you're going to be doing in a place that they've probably never been to, that they probably never will go to, that they probably don't have any framework to be able to understand. In some cases, maybe a country they can't even locate on a map. But when they see your video, it's going to show them visually what it is that you want to do. I remember one time I was doing a fundraising meeting with somebody, and I just showed the video. It was like 3 minutes long. And when I ended the video, I noticed that the person was crying, because like it impacted them so much just to be able to see, not just to hear about it, but to see it. And so, yeah, I would definitely recommend the video. And then the other thing is some sort of physical handout that you can always leave with the person. And in my book, I talk about 3 different types that I would recommend having all 3. But at the very least have one, because you need to have something physical. People oftentimes will have the greatest intention to give after a meeting, but if they don't have something physical that can remind them, they may forget. Yeah. And oftentimes it feels awkward to follow up. You should follow up. If the person said that they're going to give it, they're going to get back to you. You should always follow up, at least a couple of times, until it gets to the point where it's just obvious that the person's not going to give and they don't feel bad telling you no. Yeah. But anyway, the 3 types of physical printout materials that I recommend. Number one is a prayer card. And that is something that you can give to everybody, right? And even if the person doesn't ever give a donation, they have the prayer card, be a reminder for them to pray for you, which is something that is important. It doesn't necessarily result in them giving you money, but it's something that's important to have people's prayers. Number 2 is going to be a pledge card. And this is something that is less and less common as people give more and more online. If you go back 20 years, this was something that was like necessary for every missionary. But I still think it's a good idea to have a pledge card that's printed, because some people, particularly the older generation, may not be comfortable with online giving. They still want to send in physical checks. And having that pledge card is something physical to remind them where to send it to, and something that will let the missions organization know, who that money is destined for. Then that's helpful. And by the way, those people that tend to be a little bit leery about online giving, the older generation, they also tend to be some of the best missions givers, and so you don't want to leave them out by any means. And then thirdly would be what I call a missionary profile, basically a 1-page handout, full page, or potentially a pamphlet with something that kind of basically what's in your video, but in a physical printed form, giving the information of the ministry, where you're going to be going, your story, maybe your testimony, maybe some quick stats or quick facts about the place that you're going. Anything that could connect with people, that could just be a reminder of who you are and what it is that you're going to be doing.
Yeah, and also probably a business card too, because obviously, you talk to people and say, "Hey, you got a business card?" So something definitely you want there too. One thing, I know we need to wrap up this video. Another thing that you mentioned is you asked for referrals. Very important. People don't know, don't think of that, or they don't give it enough credit. I think asking for referrals, because like Danny was saying, he was very unsuccessful in cold calling, but what turns a cold call into a warm call is a referral. Anytime you can refer somebody, or anytime you can say, "Hey, so-and-so referred me to call you," that changes everything. So definitely, I would highly recommend that. One thing that I've noticed is a friend here in El Progreso, Honduras. He's a missionary, and one of his greatest successes was that he went back every 90 days, and basically he worked off of referrals based off of like his pastor referred him to another pastor, and then that pastor referred him to another pastor. So literally he worked that every 90 days. He went back to the States, and then literally he fundraised off of those referrals. So very, very strong. One thing that I do want to cover here, huh?
Can I share a story about that real quick?
Sure.
So yeah, I remember that when I was fundraising, there was an individual named Carl Coletti. He was the district superintendent for New Jersey in the Assemblies of God. And he told me something that I remembered and that really was very pivotal for me, a pivotal piece of advice. He said, anytime that you meet with somebody, you should always ask two things, not just one. So the first is the obvious question, would you consider being a financial partner or a financial donor? But the second question, and this was one that I had not thought of until he told me it, but it really became an important question for me, is who else in your network could you set up a meeting for me with? And when it was all said and done, 2 of my 3 largest monthly donors were actually referrals. They were people that I did not know, but that I had been referred to by other people that in fact, in one of the cases, I never even met with the person. The people that I had met with that did the referral, they took that physical materials that I mentioned, they took some copies to their church's missions board, and their church became, like I said, one of my 3 largest donors as a result of that referral.
Wow.
So referrals are huge. You can't underestimate the importance of that.
Yeah. So, okay. So let's just kind of I want to cover these couple of things here, and then we do need to wrap up. Okay. So basically now you're fully funded. You're on the mission field. One thing that I've got tons of missionary friends on Facebook. They don't do anything. I don't know what they're doing off of Facebook, but as far as on Facebook, they're not promoting their ministries. Many cases, they're not promoting their ministries. I think it's extremely important. I think that, I didn't know anything about the Godass. I didn't read the book. I just came to mission field with 6 suitcases and $350 a month promised to me. Again, we've done very well, but I think one thing has been a huge success for us is because I've been a business owner many years prior to coming to the mission field. I'm just a marketer by nature. Now, again, I'm not saying begging for money on Facebook. I didn't say that. I said marketing, hey, we went out and did this. Hey, we went out and did this. Another thing is, so again, marketing what you're doing, telling people a story, not lies, not evangelistically speaking. When I said tell a story, I'm saying tell them a story as in what you're doing. Hey, we went out here. These are some plans. This is a boy we met when we went to the mission field, or when we went to the community. We helped this community. It's a young little boy we met. We're changing their lives. See, what I'm saying is you've got to paint a picture for the people at home for what you're doing. People don't know what you're doing. Don't assume that they know what you're doing. Don't assume that they even are thinking about you right now. So I think that that's one. You've got to use social media for your benefit. You've got to constantly keep your face before people. Another thing that people complain about on Facebook, well, nobody sees my post. That's right, because if they have 3,000 friends, they're not going to look at 3,000 postings that day. So you've got to keep not only your activity of your ministry posted on Facebook, but you got to keep postings that people are going to interact with. And this is a whole nother class. People that are going to interact with your postings. So the more they interact with your postings, the more your postings are going to be shown to those people. And then more likelihood of your ministry postings is going to be posted as well. Don't just rely on your Facebook page. You know, a lot of people think, oh, well, I'm just going to open up a ministry page. Everybody's going to go to it and see it. No, they're not. So what I do is I do a lot of posting just on our personal pages versus our ministry page. So that's one. Use social media. I'm not saying begging for money, but use social media. And then, newsletters. I know you talked about newsletters in your book, and I know that the God Ass talked about newsletters. We don't do newsletters as per se. We do video letters, so to speak, or video news. We send that out every 3 months. We sit down and we're real with our people. We talk to them. I put a lot of content in there, meaning I flip photos in there, some other videos, meaning as we're talking, I keep our interest, meaning you can't just sit there in front of the camera like this and expect people to watch you for the next 10 minutes. They're going to want to see some photos as you're sliding in there, some videos as you're sliding there. People love those from us. It works. And then, I'm just trying to think of some other things that we do down here to inspire people to be a part of the work that we do. So anyway, those are some things that we do ourselves, and we're consistent. Oh, I remember the other thing. I had a missionary contact my wife, and he does children's ministry. My wife does children's ministry. And so he says, oh, by the way, I went to you guys' website the other day. And I was super impressed. Now, this guy's a graphics designer by college education. He says, I'm super impressed by your website because it's fresh and it's updated. Yes, you should keep a website that's updated with fresh content of what you're doing, because not all people are going to, one, be on Facebook, two, go to your Facebook profile and look at your content. Some people are just going to go, oh, hey, Morning Star Missions or whatever your organization is, go type it in. And, they're thinking about donating, but they're going to want to see what you're doing. But if your blog is like a year out of date, I mean, they're going to be like, well, what have they even been doing? So you've got to keep fresh content on your website and fresh information on your website. So yes, become fully funded. But like Danny said, you've got to constantly keep on fundraising. When you go back to the States, you got to set time aside to go visit those people that do support you, those churches that support you, but also look for other opportunities to raise support. And then also you got to use tools like Facebook and Instagram and things like that to constantly keep yourself in front of the people, and then also some type of update of your ministry, meaning a newsletter, and then also keeping a fresh content on your website.
Yeah, no, I think it's hugely important, the topic of staying in touch with your donors and keeping them up to date on everything that you're doing in the ministry.
Yeah.
For two reasons. First is the pragmatic reason that if you're out of sight, you're out of mind, right? So the people that are more in contact with the donors are the people that are more likely to retain those donors. If somebody is evaluating their budget, the missionary that they haven't heard from in 2 years is the one that's the most likely to get cut.
Yeah.
So first there's the pragmatic reason, but then there's also just almost the reason of gratitude, right? Like there's a story of Jesus when he heals 10 lepers. And only one comes back to him to say thank you. And Jesus is like, well, hold up, weren't there 10 people that I healed? Yeah. I remember there was another 9 the last time you guys showed up. Where are they now? There's only one that actually had the gratitude. And I think that part of the reason for staying in touch with your donors is gratitude, right? They are, in some cases, making big sacrifices because they believe in you and because they believe in the ministry. And to just completely ghost on them and not really keep them up to date or give them any information on what's going on with this money that they're giving, I feel like that is a lack of gratitude in a big way.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'd definitely say, keep in touch with donors. And there's a lot of ways to do that. Social media is one great tool, depending on where you are in the world, the nature of your ministry. There may be some limitations on the type of things that you could post on social media. I know that for me personally, there were some limitations on the things that I could post on social media because I was working with gang members.
Yeah.
But use social media as best as you can. Have a newsletter. I would say, for me personally, what I did is I had a monthly newsletter. So every month I was sending something out. I tried to put something new on social media at least once a week if I could. And then lastly, this is the one that requires the most time. So not everybody may want to do this, but I think it's a really good practice if you can to try to set up a Zoom call one-on-one with a donor once a week to be able to just contact the person and talk with them. And really at the end of the day, when you reach out to somebody and you try to set up a conversation just to catch up with the person and let them know how things are going, and by the end of the conversation, like you weren't asking for money or anything, you just were genuinely sharing with them how your ministry is going, that really leaves an impression on people. And it makes it a lot easier when it comes time to call that person, because you do need a donation if you contacted them before, just to catch up. It makes them feel like you care about the relationship, not just about the donation, which is what you should care about. You should care about the relationship, not just the donation.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, people don't want to feel used. Yeah. And I'm going to say this is there's a gentleman that got us connected to a church, and they started supporting us with a small donation, and they got a new pastor in, and they had a board meeting. It was like you said, once a year, they were deciding who they're going to support. And according to him, this is what he said. He said that the pastor said, look, we're going to eliminate these missionaries right here. We never even hear from them. They don't ever even give us an update. But what we're going to do is we're going to increase the funding for Morning Star Missions, because they're always constantly updating us of what they're doing. So that's the testimony I received. So it's extremely important. Like Danny was saying, one, people want to feel appreciated. And then two, people want to know what they're investing in, and, if they don't really know what they're investing in, more than likely, they're going to probably say, you know what, the budget's kind of getting a little tight here. We really don't know what this money's going towards. So I think we're going to go ahead and cut funding over here. So anyway, well, man, as always, I love talking to you. Appreciate what you're doing as far as it there in El Salvador. And, we got a couple other classes. So, everybody that's watching these, make sure you stay tuned. Danny's got a lot of great wisdom and insight, and, can share a lot of wisdom with us on how to become better full-time missionaries. Thanks a lot, Danny.
Thank you. Have a great day.